So I was on Battle List last night, just trying out some different builds, getting outside the meta a little bit, thinking outside the box about some strategies that I can employ that aren't really things that we see too often in multiplayer. And one of the ones that I came up with that I really liked was a Seleucid build, and I used it maybe in 3 or 4 matches last night. And basically the idea behind it is it's a skirmish and cav build, which you would kind of expect to see from Seleucids, to be honest. I mean, the Hellenic cataphracts, the Median cavalry, that stuff you probably see in a lot of Seleucid builds. But what you're going to see in this build particularly is a Thureos spear main line, 3 Syrian heavy archers, and 3 Eastern slingers, and then I believe 3 Hellenic cataphracts and 3 Median cavalry. And basically, the idea behind it is relatively simple. Use the Thureos main line as kind of just peltas, basically. You're going to use them as javelins. They're a decent, they're very versatile, very good spear unit in a lot of ways. Very fast, can do a lot of damage with their javelins. But with a Thureos spear main line, you don't really want to engage your opponent right at the start of the battle. So basically the idea behind this is going to do a lot of skirmishing, do a lot of cavalry fighting out on the flanks, and just try to pick away my opponent's mobility, get that off the field before I ever engage in melee combat. And of course I want to use a lot of my heavy archers and my slingers to my advantage, do as much damage with them as I can, shoot as much of my ammo as I can before any melee engagements start. To start this battle, I'm going to actually run directly into a cav fight here, and I was hoping to quickly take my opponent's cavalry off the field, and he actually took it. He has only 2 cav units over here, and I have a strategist general, which means that I can use trample and battle rhythm, get into the melee fight, hopefully destroy them off of the charge, and then refresh their fatigue after the trample wears off and they get into exhausted, and after they get exhausted. So it was weird because there's a couple parts of this cav engagement that I really don't like, and it was really frustrating because I had my Median cavalry engage the Bactrian noble horse over in this flank, and that's not going to go well for them. The Median cavalry are a good, very good mid-tier cavalry unit, but the Bactrian noble horse are better. They're more elite here. They have 95 armor, 90 health, very strong unit. But I'm going to actually pull my Hellenic cataphracts out of that engagement and charge into the back of them. And this is one thing that I really hate about this patch, to be honest. Cavalry fights take forever. I've always been one to think that a Hellenic cataphract charge or any kind of cataphract charge into the back of a unit should basically shatter them instantly. And I think a lot of people would probably agree with that. Maybe not shatter them instantly, but really be very devastating. If we look at what happened here, Hellenic cataphract charges into the back of them, probably been in melee 5 or so seconds. They got like 3 kills off the charge. And I get Bactrian noble horse are a tanky unit, 95 armor, 90 health, but come on. Like, a cav unit that gets surrounded by 2 cav units, one of them being a cataphract, hammer and ambling from behind, that should just be dead right off the bat, in my opinion. That's one thing that really bothers me about this patch. On this fight right here, my Hellenic cataphract gets into melee combat. I'm at 70 out of 80, they're at 53. So the battle rhythm and the trample were fantastic. One thing I didn't count on, though, and this was a really good move for my Bactrian opponent, he's going to bring a peltas over here and activate quick reload and precision shot on the Bactrian peltas. And as you guys know, peltas have the bonus versus cavalry. They're going to start shredding my Hellenic cataphracts. And that makes me really sad because I was going to destroy this cav fight, and I just didn't really consider him bringing the peltas over. So my guys are getting absolutely wrecked. Somehow he's not friendly firing at all. And I'm going to end up losing a lot of this Hellenic cataphract unit, and this engagement's going to go on for a while, and it's really not going to go super well for me. Over here, completely surrounded, only down to 60 men, and now he's going to start getting some free shots into the cataphracts from the back with the horse archers. So if there's one thing in this game that I really, really think needs to change, it's the speed of cavalry engagements, because I think that the way it is right now, the way this game is, when you engage on the flanks with cavalry, it's usually not in your benefit because it gives infantry, there's always so much time for infantry to come over and reinforce the cavalry and turn it in their favor. So even if you take a really good cavalry engagement, it's so often not going to be decisive, and they're often going to have time to back up a really poor engagement. And I would say that my opponent took a pretty poor engagement there. He basically had 2 cav units fight 3 of mine. Now I did a good job with the peltas, 100% I agree with that, but I just don't like that. I don't like that you can engage and like kind of correct a mistake that easily, in my opinion. I think it's kind of bad gameplay balance, but that's just my opinion. Out on this flank, I have my Thureos spears finally throwing into the Bactrian peltas. My general is probably going to die in that fight, or at least get the cataphract unit is going to get really torn up in that fight. His Hellenic cataphract is going to die, and we're eventually going to be able to kill the noble horse, but not before my Median cavalry and Hellenic cataphract kind of get beaten up. So in the center here, Looks like some hillmen engaged the Thureos spear. I did let that fight happen because I knew that I had some Medean cavalry to back them up. I'm just going to rout them off the field with a charge. They're not going to fight in melee for very long. And the rest of my line is basically going to pull away as I try to get a Thureos spear. Actually try to tie down that noble horse. This was a good move for me. Medean cavalry block the charge of this Bactrian noble horse and then charge in behind it. So I should be able to do decently in that kind of fight. Definitely a mistake over on this side. I'm going to use trample in this engagement, and I have absolutely no hope of refreshing their fatigue. So, reason this is a mistake, and actually my opponent did a terrible job there too, because trample does nothing after the charge. It's just an increase in charge bonus, so that was definitely a mistake from him as well. But you don't want to use trample on cataphract units in this game unless you want to completely shatter a unit off a charge, or you have the ability to refresh their fatigue. And with my general being on the other side of the map, I'm going to get these guys exhausted very quickly. As soon as the trample wears off, they'll be exhausted, and their fighting prowess is basically going to get cut in half. So, bad move from me. As soon as it wears off, which it already has, yeah, I got 15 kills off the charge, but that's not really a huge deal. Their melee combat's going to be really cut down, and they're not going to be anywhere near as effective as they were. So, bad use of trample from me there. Don't use that unless you think you can completely shatter a unit, and the only way you can do so is with the trample ability. So yeah, finally going to be able to rout this Bactrian noble horse. Stupid how many units I lost. Like, Thureos spears and horse archers all had the time to come all the way from over here and run all the way over there in time for that cavalry engagement to end. So I don't like that at all. And I realize it's how the game is, and you kind of just have to adapt to that playstyle, but I just don't like it. I think it's one of the worst things about this patch. Because I think it was a very decisive cavalry fight that should have been over very quickly, and it wasn't. So main line, pulling away with the Thureos spears. Don't want to engage Bactrian Royal Guard or Thorax Swordsman. That's kind of obvious. Thureos spears have no hope of winning that, and I just want to be able to throw my spears. Like, that's kind of a big deal with this build. You want to be able to skirmish as much as possible. So I did actually decide to box up here because I realized that I had 3 units in the vicinity that would be able to shoot in on the flank of this Thorax Sword. So gonna put them in square formation. Pretty decent move. I think they'll be able to tank up the charge, and then all these units are gonna just shoot into the flank, do a lot of damage there. Gonna pull my cataphract unit out of there. The Medean cavalry actually are gonna end up routing. But my general, I think my general is dead at this point. We'll see in a second. It says casualties sustained, so he's not dead, but he's gonna die relatively soon, I think. Over on the left flank, my left flank, doing pretty well. Bactrian noble horse got cut down in melee by the Medean cavalry and the Thureos spears, so I think I did a good job blocking the charge there, and then I'm going to continue on with the Medean cavalry into the Bactrian peltas. Now, remember, Bactrian peltas have good melee stats, so I'm not going to be able to rout them off the field too quickly. They are in red morale, but just in general, I am winning over on this side, which is good. And in the center here, I think he's getting way too ballsy with the Bactrian Royal Guard. My Thureos spears ended up routing, and some of his Bactrian peltas moved up. But he doesn't really have a lot of units in this vicinity, which means my cataphracts should be able to come in and do some damage either to the Thorax Swords or to the peltas. So we're going to see what I do to that Bactrian Royal Guard relatively soon, but first we'll watch this cataphract charge into the peltas. That should be very fun, and yeah, that was a big old charge right there. It did a lot of damage. I should be able to wrap that unit up fairly easily. So notice the Bactrian Royal Guard was getting really far away from his main line, and was like, okay, you keep running away with the Thureos spears, they're not going to be able to engage the Bactrian Royal Guard yet, and just shoot into the back of them. I mean, I can do a lot of HP damage, do a lot of damage in general as the battle wears on into the back of this Bactrian Royal Guard if he continues chasing, so don't really feel the need to engage over there. And over here, Medean cavalry charge into the Bactrian peltas. They've lost 6 men. So I had to pull out and kind of cycle charge because I realized that they weren't going to die anytime soon. But I have a lot of cataphracts over in this vicinity, so charge here from the Medean cavalry and from maybe the cataphract. I'm not sure if they actually follow up this engagement, but gonna hammer and anvil from both sides. Good charge here. He's pulling away, not facing the charge. So finally, these Bactrian peltas should be out of my hair relatively soon once this Medean cavalry charge comes in. And that'll be good for me. So, still pulling away, my Syrian heavy archers decided to engage one of my Thureos spears against one of his Thureos spears. And I was kind of surprised that the Bactrian Royal Guard were actually doing a good job of catching up with my Thureos, because they are faster, but maybe I just mismicroed them a little bit. But regardless, haven't done too much damage to them yet, but I'll be shifting my attention to them soon. Am going to commit my general here. Maybe this is where he died. Just realized he kind of had lived up his purpose. So I'm just going to charge right up the center here. And with some skirmish fire, he's going to actually turn his flank, put them in a shield wall, did a really good job doing that, but it doesn't matter. I have so much skirmish superiority over on this side of the field that they should get shredded. There we go. So yeah, that unit will rout relatively soon. And now I have a lot of cavalry in the back here that's kind of free. Like his army is very, very spread out. And not really compact, and that's going to allow me to kind of pick it apart because he doesn't have cavalry left on the field. He has some thorax swords, a couple Bactrian Royal Guard, and a horse archer unit, but that's only his cavalry, the only cavalry unit he has on the field. And what he did here with his general was definitely a mistake. Like, he just chased so far with them, and I think that if he had kept his main line a little bit more compact, he'd be in good shape. But yeah, he's turning his flank to my skirmishers, and I mean, this can't go well for them. Like, they're engaged in Thureos spears, they're going to do some damage there, but with their back turned, that armor and that health, not as big a deal. And so yeah, these Eastern Slingers and one Syrian Heavy Archer just going to tear into them from the flank, and they're not going to have a good time. So, another engagement over here, Bactrian Royal Guard engaging Thureos spears. And I see another opportunity to shoot into his rear, because he really can't catch my Heavy Archers. He could charge his Horse Archers into melee, but I do have cavalry supporting them, and in general, I don't think they would do enough to Heavy Archers to really make it worth it at all. So, oh my god, they're getting destroyed. And these are his two most important units on the field. Like, he has the two Bactrian Royal Guard, and they're both getting destroyed by my skirmishers. So, once he loses those, I think he's going to have a really hard time turning this battle around. My cataphract charged up the center here into his Horse Archers, which I believe are out of ammo. Obviously, a pretty easy fight for them. And then I noticed another Bactrian Peltast out here that I'll charge in with the Medean Cavalry and get them off the field as well. So yeah, his general's dead at this point. And I'm going to commit one of my Heavy Archers to melee just to tie them down. Didn't have any more ammo left, so just get them in melee combat. Not a horrible unit if you consider skirmishers. I mean, they're not as good as Peltasts or some of the other Agriani and Axemen, stuff like that. But for archer units, they're probably the best, or one of the best melee units in the game. The Persian elite archers are probably better because they have the bonus versus cav, and certainly the Cimmerian Heavy Archers, but having 40 armor is very useful in melee combat for an archer unit. And you can see, actually this one engaged as well, gonna rout the rest of the Bactrian Royal Guard. And so I don't have much left to worry about at this point. Thorax Sword out there, Thureos Spears, really not a whole lot left. So I'm gonna engage Syrian Heavy Archers, and opponent's gonna do a very nice job here. I believe he's actually gonna pop square formation on this one before the charge comes in. We'll see if he does that. Maybe I imagine that, or he does that a little bit later. Regardless, charge is going to come in. Not do that much damage. They and cavalry are kind of really tired at the moment. So yeah, and they're a high armor unit. They didn't do very much. Maybe 10 or so kills off that charge. And then remnants of this Hellenic Cataphract going to charge into this Bactrian Peltast. Rout that off the field. And over here I had no reason to engage that Thorax Swordsman yet. So just going to kite that. Let them get tired by themselves. And Bactria really doesn't have any shot of winning the battle at this point. So yeah, now he's going to pop square formation, have a couple of my archers engaged on the front. Lose a lot of their offensive capabilities. Not that they have a lot anyway, but when you go into square formation, most of the unit isn't engaging. So it's really good in a situation like this, actually, where he's just trying to survive and protect against rear charges, but in terms of a bunch of killing power, they're not going to have it here, because only like a third of the unit is actually engaged in melee. But it will be very nice for blunting the charge of my Medean Cavalry as they come in. So I'm going to charge in, probably a little bit too spread out here. A little bit more of a compact formation would have been better. Because actually, only like maybe 10 guys actually hit the Thureos Spears on that charge. So not very good for me, but yeah. Like I said, at this point, this battle's completely over. And the mass rout should kick in relatively soon. Once the balance bar gets to roughly about here, about 80% in one player's favor, I believe that's when the army losses kicks in and you kind of get an automatic chain route. So that was the end of that battle. I think the opponent did a couple things really nicely. Backing up that cataphract engagement with the Bactrian Peltast was very nice. His use of quick reload shredded my cataphract unit, which sucked. That was my general. Only got 52 kills. So kind of bad play from me. Like, I think we both made mistakes in that engagement over on my right flank with the cavalry. He shouldn't necessarily have taken certainly this was another patch, taking an engagement like that, 2 units of Bactrian Noble Horse and a Hellenic cataphract against 2 Hellenic cataphracts and a Medean cavalry. Not going to win that cavalry fight. But yeah, like I said, you don't get punished very hard for taking bad engagements on this patch in terms of cavalry fights because they take so long. And just in general, the cav charges don't seem to work as well as they do on infantry units as they do on cav. So, or maybe I said that backwards. Regardless, like the charges against cavalry units don't seem to do that much damage. So, I took a really good engagement and it ended up I ended up kind of getting punished for it anyway. And he was able to bring Thureos spear and horse archers over there that ended up doing way more damage than they would have on other patches. But hell, it's hard to complain about it at this point considering how long it's been out. But I just don't like that gameplay decision at all. I think that if you get a hammer and anvil with a cataphract unit, basically any unit in the game should kind of get destroyed. But regardless, Thureos Spear's main line didn't do amazingly. I mean, these guys did relatively well. These ones kind of got caught in melee. But remember that once they throw their jabs, they've kind of outlived their purpose. I mean, yeah, they can be used in melee okay, but they only have 24 melee attack. They're not great. So really all they were there to do was soak up fire, soak up melee engagement time, tie down units while my heavy archers and slingers do damage. So that worked out pretty well. I mean, 202 kills, 111 kills, 115 kills. Pretty nice there. And my cavalry did quite well also. And in general, I think this was a nice change of pace from a lot of the other battle-less games I've been playing where people are just doing the barbarian sword spam. So I liked his build. I thought he utilized it okay. I mean, he got really spread out and probably did a little bit too much there, but in general, I thought it was a pretty good battle and bringing an army composition that you guys don't see too often. So Thureos Spear's main line, maybe not tournament viable, but certainly a good build. And if you skirmish effectively and get the right engagements off with tying down units with a Thureos Spear and maybe coming in for a hammer and anvil or shooting in from the flanks with your skirmishers, can do a lot of damage. So hope you guys enjoyed. You might want to try out this battle or try out this army composition if you want. It's a lot of fun. If you want to try something new, just highly mobile, highly skirmish based, very fun. So hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you all later. Indie Pride signing out. Peace.